Okay, you watched me take a history. And this is basically how I would take it. Now, Kent is a very good example of why you would need a history, because here's a fellow who really didn't have conflict at home, but ends up with all these messages. And so how did he do that? That would generally happen to a feeler who's feeling their way through life and then letting their thoughts follow what they feel. Now, the problem with that is that you can be driving down the road and someone cut in front of you and you almost hit them and your adrenaline's up. And then you drive on and forget about that. And then you start thinking, why do I have this funny feeling? And so you look for a reason for the feeling. And that can really affect you. So one of the things is he's feeling driven and then he's going to look for things to prove it. And so if you at first glance you wouldn't see anything there. Now what I did is that he's a feeler and a thinker. And so I know some of the basic characteristics of a feeler and a thinker. Then as he was speaking, did you notice I kept adding to my list of feeler and thinker? Because I'm remembering more traits about a feeler and thinker. If I had his test there, I would have had all this. But I'm remembering as I go along, yes, that is significant for a feeler and a thinker, and that's significant, and that's significant. And I want to go back and show him that. And this actually adds weight to my session too, because I'm going back and I'm going to tell him about these things, and he was not going to disagree. I mean, some of them you'll disagree with, but these later on that I remember that are really feeler traits that I should have listed and I just didn't get them all. And again, I said I'm only trying to get this at 80%. But as he was mentioning those things, I started to remember him, and I said, oh yeah, I got to talk to him about that, because that's part of his personality and it's normal. So the first thing I'd tell him in my office is we'd now go over your personality and just look at how you're made. You are an extremely loyal person. You'll have an average of 1 to 3 close friends, people that really, really do know you. You like security, and that is in money and also in relationships. You'd like people to be the same every day. If they're going to be angry every day. If they're going to be happy. You can work with yourself or others. He'd be a great team player. He likes truth, and if he ever does tell a lie, the reason he'll tell the lie is to keep peace. To avoid, to please. Well, that's it, to avoid the conflict, so I'm going to please you, so I'll tell you what you want to hear. And so he comes home, Pele goes, where were you? And it's kind of like, well, what do you want to hear? Which is going to bring up another issue for me later on, and these are all discipleship issues and things that I'm going to bring the lectures into. To understand, when he leaves the house with his little bag called Tricks for Marriage, does he have any tools for conflict? Now, I'm not judging his parents, I'm saying good or bad. I'm not saying we're supposed to have conflict. I'm saying he had 2 passive parents and the mother wore the pants. What does he have as a man to handle conflict? Now, he's married to somebody who's a doer under pressure. And he doesn't have the tools. So, I give this illustration. I'm in Africa. I'm going along in the car with a fellow. We get a flat tire, and he opens up the trunk, and I know the bag I'm looking at. It's the tool bag your father gives you when he dies. And I thought, this will be a daisy. I open it up, and there's a screwdriver in it. How do you change a tire with a screwdriver? You can't. Well, I'm not mad at him. It's all his dad left him. Wave down a truck, get a tire tool, we get it changed. When I get to town, I buy him a tire tool. Add this tool. Now, he doesn't have the tools for conflict. And she's a doer and wants resolution under conflict, so the only thing he does is withdraw and run. Do you think that's frustrating for her? And so right away, I know that I'm going to have a relationship spiral to talk about. And to ask and to look at in my bags of personality and past. We spread apart in this thing, and how do we go back with understanding and the cross? How do I look at both those things? Because he doesn't have the tools for conflict, he's avoiding conflict, and often he'll perceive things as conflict that isn't. She just wants an answer now. And so she's driving for an answer, and he's withdrawing, which makes her feel like she's got to drive more, and he withdraws more, and it goes down into this tight little spiral. See a discipleship issue there, and we can spend some time on that. He needs a quiet time. He needs some alone time. Kent knows all his own flaws. You're late to the party. To tell him what's wrong. And here's the thing too, a doer and a thinker like Pele under pressure will tell the truth because the truth is so valued without any sugar on it. And emotionally, for a feeler, that is very hard to take. I tell Betty, I like steak, but I don't want the whole kilo at once. You know, so I like truth because you just give it to me a little bit and flavor it. So if I say, Betty, how do you like this shirt? She'll say, you look stupid and I hate it. Well, I'd rather have her say, you know, I really like the other shirt better. You look really nice in it. And so a doer under pressure is just going to start giving you the facts just like this. And he doesn't want the facts. He wants them all floured up and sugary and all this. One of the ways to communicate with him is to tell him what you're not saying before you ever tell him what you are. Kent, I'm not saying you're a bad husband. I'm not saying I'm sorry I married you. I'm not saying you're a bad provider. I'm not saying that I don't love you. I'm not saying that I don't want to spend time with you. What I am saying is this. Why did you go do that when you know I didn't like it? See, if you tell him what you're not saying first, you're going to get a lot further because all the emotions come in and the feelings are there. He'll stall under pressure with the feeler and the thinker. We've talked about that. Think and feel and think and feel. So we need guidelines for decision making. We'll talk about that. That's a discipleship issue. You'll get obsessive only because of what you feel. One of the things I would just ask him in passing in counseling, what's your diet? How much sugar are you eating? Do you have too much caffeine? Does it affect any of that in you? Because if it starts affecting your feelings, you'll obsess on why you have the feeling. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, one girl who was suicidal, and I said, what did you have today? She says, well, I usually have around 12 to 15 Cokes, 4 or 5 coffees, and then I wait at night and for some reason I binge eat. Well, and I'm depressed. Well, change your diet. Because he could end up obsessing. He'd hate complex relationships. He's a great teacher. He's critical in his thinking, which is positive or negative, but that can be a very positive thing to be critical in thinking. To say, why are we doing that? Should that be done? What's going on? Under pressure, he'll pout because he wants acceptance. And then he'll pout to try to get more acceptance. Well, the problem is with a doer and a thinker under pressure, they've got no compassion under pressure. So you can pout all you want, and all you're going to get out of that is grow up, not a big hug, which will feed that. You're a short list person, which is really nice. He keeps a short list. And he's the man of the second chance. And that's really nice to be married to somebody like that because all it takes is an apology and I'm sorry and a hug and it's over. With your friends, that's all it takes too. You like to see people happy. You're enthusiastic. You work for praise. So Pele would see love in little things, in the detail of things. He would only do those little things for the praise. And it's one of the things I did for years, you know. I'd clean the house and just surprise Betty and just keep waiting for just the pat on the head, you know, that you're okay. That's really nice. That was a blessing. And I'd say, well, did you see the house? Did you see that? I clean the house every day. Why would that be a big deal? See, those are the facts. I cleaned it every day. Nobody's praising me. Nobody brought me flowers. I cleaned all the toilet chairs. I got nothing. What do you want? You're getting nothing. But you only work for the praise. That's why you work, and praise motivates you, and it moves you forward. If you give, you like to know that it blessed people when you gave them. You'd like to hear it. See, I'm just saying this is how I'm created. You like variety. You could get bored. I said you're a creative temperament. And one thing about the feeler and the thinker and the doer, or the feeler and thinker high and with the doer, they call them creative. They have a lot of talent, ability, and intellect. And when you tell them, they won't believe you because you see your own flaws. You hate injustice, if you see that. And you hate that feeling of being trapped under somebody that's unjust. So you'll follow, but you hate it if you're trapped under a leader that you don't see as meeting the standard. Because your identity can be involved in the following. I don't mind following you, but I want to know who I follow. You need a model. You like a model for a husband. You like a model for a father. You want a model as a Christian. So it's really important you get the right model. And of course, we'd ask the question, what kind of model did he get? He got a model where actually Dad's in charge. Mom's in charge. Now you got a doer under pressure that'd like to take charge, so you're going to roll over and play dead and create what you hate. Mm-hmm. And so now we got another relationship spiral where I create what I hate. Time equals love. People are at equal pleasure. And it's funny with the thinker side in you, they have this feeling something's wrong with me. I don't know what, but something. They all have that. Just something's wrong. Do you know how much ammunition that gives the enemy? Just something's wrong with me? When is that ever fixed? And then we look at this, and here's a pressure cooker. That's all I've drawn here. And what happens to Kent is that as events take place, the heat turns up, and finally he blows. But it takes him a long time to blow because he simmers and simmers and simmers. Now, again, a doer has a lot shorter simmer time than a feeler. And so the feeler is going to simmer this long and go off, and the doer is going to simmer that long and go off. And so there's a shorter time there. All right, I would ask Kent in my office, did I hit it at 80%? Okay.
Probably more like 90.
Okay, okay. So now, do you see the pressure that takes off of him and me when I say, did I hit it at 80? Because he's not feeling like I'm trying to bend him in to any of these definitions. I don't want him to feel that. And I don't want him to feel pressure to be any of those things. And I don't want the pressure to hit it perfectly. How do I know him perfectly? God knows you perfectly. That's the only person that knows you perfectly. And so I'm not trying to get it at that. I'm taking the pressure off of us and saying, look, at 80%, are we happy with that? But my point would be this now. If I saw your parents leaving the hospital holding you, I would stop them and say, let me tell you something about Kent. He's loyal. He wants acceptance. He'll work very, very hard for you with praise. He wants stability. He wants direction. He needs a model. Give him some advice. And when you see him spiraling down in depression, his emotions have taken over his mind, and just stop him and say, now tell me exactly what's wrong. Those are the things I would have told your mom and dad. So knowing that he has these needs that are personality needs, and he's born dead to God in the Spirit, looking for those needs and the deep spiritual needs, he goes to his parents and he begins to look for these needs to be met. Now, Dad is very nice and very likable. That's a model that he went with, and it fits his temperament and personality. He's also passive because he doesn't like conflict. But there's no direction, and there's no communication, and there's no verbal praise. And those are things that he would really need. So these are identity messages. So I put that up there. I got identity messages, and now I'm seeing what is identity. And he's coming away that I'm not needed. Because a feeler likes to be included, and you're never included, and there's no activity. So I begin to see what the enemy would whisper to him. That in this box then, I'm not needed, I'm unwanted, I'm unacceptable. We go over here with Mom, and Mom is passive, and Mom wears the pants. So she's the one in charge. Again, we said there's not a whole lot of tools for handling conflict. She doesn't talk to him. She doesn't spend time. Time and talking equals acceptance and love. So what's it going to make him feel? Now, we can all say, well, this is just, you had a pretty nice family. And in my family, I had alcoholics and people that beat me and all this. You got nothing to complain about. Do you know what? You're all placed on the vine in the perfect place to give you the best chance of recognizing him. And your situation is your situation, and your situation is very significant to me because it's the one that makes you look to him day by day to be your life. So I never minimize anybody else's. And isn't it amazing? You keep thinking as a parent, well, if I was a better parent, I guess my kids could have good flesh and go to hell. It's just ridiculous. I wish I was a better parent, then my kids wouldn't have any of this. And then they could go to hell because they wouldn't need Jesus. But God permitted into all of our lives exactly what we needed that pressured us to come into him. And so these things to me are significant. They may not be to you. They're very significant to me as I'm listening and getting to participate in somebody else's life. People are important. there's a covert rejection from dad, a covert rejection from mom because of no talk and no communication and no direction and no inclusion. So now what he's going to do is people please, and his dad likes sports, so I'll get involved in sports, but he can't do it. And so now he's got to give up and quit on that. And at that point, I'm a failure, I'm unacceptable, and of course that proves that I'm not good enough. Now, I would have liked to have seen the girls that he dated before he met Peely. I would have just liked to have met him, because some of them I would have just said, brother, what are you doing with her? Because you have set up here a classic case of down dating. And that is that we hate contrast. And so if we feel worthless or if we feel unlovable or something wrong with me, I will not date somebody with worth. It's too much pressure, because they're going to find out what I'm like and dump me, and I couldn't take the pain. So I'll go with somebody that's safe, that is more worthless than me. And so here's a real hiccup. I'm trying to undo my identity messages. I'm going to undo these through dating. And the girls I date are going to be more worthless than me. Well, do you think they're going to get rid of that message? I think they're going to probably go off to the next guy. And the next guy and the next guy. So, what kind of person would you date if you went up and you advertised yourself in the paper looking for someone? I'm not needed, unwanted, unacceptable, a failure, not good enough, unlovable, rejected, and something's wrong with me. Come on, ladies. Well, I don't know who gets in the line. I don't know who queues up. But I got a pretty good idea we're going to end up down dating. I don't think the most acceptable person is going to come to the forefront, and he's going to end up getting rejected then by these girls, which is going to confirm this again. And of course, once you're in that loop, because one of the things for the feeler and the thinker, we said, is sex equals acceptance, is that really what he'd want to date for is acceptance, and the acceptance would undo these things. Then mom and dad don't include him, and again, he's left out. He's been left out in sports. He's been left out through covert rejection and the passivity of a family. And in the end, this starts getting solidified in me. So I've got my identity. We're just getting an idea of how you had your identity. Again, could I get it at 80%? I'm not trying to just tell you every single detail, because I don't need to know every single detail, because the answer is so great. And so we perform and we try harder. He'll get angry. And when he gets angry, these are the kind of things we'll see him do. Run, avoid, he was dating. Which means there would still be an element of him when he's in his spiral that, Peely, would you please take away all these feelings for me? Could your behavior take care of all, get rid of all this for me? He'll quit, just give up, withdraw. He also could try harder. Fantasy of would have, should have, could have. Finally have the explosion. And then, because he's waited so long for the explosion, the frustration's not over today, but over 6 months worth of things. Then he withdraws and he just replays in his mind and punishes himself for what you could have done. Just self-punishment. In all of that, I just end up creating a self that I really, really don't like. And so what this does is it proves that. I try to change by doing that. I do more of this. And I go down into my tight little spiral. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Then, there's one other thing that I just mentioned here, is that what's his concept of God? So on the one hand, God is here, and with your mind you'll run to him, and with emotions away. In his very worst moment, not all the time at his worst, God doesn't talk. He's not passive. There's a question mark concerning what he really wants, because I still don't have the model. There's no direction, and I know that I'm not good enough. And that creates a conflict then with him. I've got a lot of discipleship issues. I want to talk more about identity with him. Spirit, soul, and body. The circles, the identity circles. I'd like to look at that with him a little more. See, and develop that. And probably as we begin to work together, more things will come to mind that he does to try to change. And so we could get on to that, what he does to try to change. I want to deal with him on his God concept and kind of go through your life and show you that God has been proving to you that he does talk, that he has been active, that he has been leading, and that you have been meeting the model. You just didn't know you were meeting it. You assumed you weren't meeting it, but you're meeting it. There's no big question over what he wants out of you, and that's this. And that's all he wants. You begin to see that. And you see that he directs you. But how does he direct you? Well, not the way you thought he directed you, but he has directed every path in your life and brought you to where you ought to be. And he's done that, and I'd want to look at that. And do you know what? You've been good enough, because here's the thing. All these years, he's blessed you. And so God has been undoing those lying emotions about him. I want to look at God concept more with him. I'd like to look at him in his marriage. If I didn't meet Peely, I'd say, hey, would you tell me what her temperament is? What do you see her as? Well, here's some of the things that would really frustrate her about you. And the thing is, when he goes into the flesh and does this stuff, and he's trying to milk needs out of her, running and avoiding and trying harder and exploding and withdrawing, what do you think that does to her flesh circle? So you stir the whole thing up. Now, we looked at that and we said, okay, this is like a top spinning, and we want it to stop, and all it takes to spin it is a like message. So it would only take an authority in your life, or a co-worker or a partner, to not give you direction, to not communicate with you what's happening in the business. All it would take is Peely to be passive, to try to take over, to not talk to you, to not have time. Now you got a thinker who needs time alone. So that right there would be personality pushing flesh. That's where you need to take up the cross and say, that isn't what she means in that. And I'm going to take up the cross and not let this stir in me. And in my understanding, I'm going to see she does need some time alone. Then it really doesn't mean that she doesn't love me. Her love would be shown to you in the details, the task, and everything that's done. If you're rejected in a group, if somebody rejects you, if somebody leaves you out, everybody gets in the car, and then they're 20 minutes down the road and go, man, was Kent out of the bathroom yet? Where's Kent? And Kent comes out here and he's just standing here like this. What do you think is going to happen? Yeah, all of that stuff's going to stir. So we have a lot of things that we can tie in here with the lectures now that we know those, and bring them back in and work with it. What's the solution? Get a life. And brother, I know that Christ is your life. But here's two things. One is, be sure and bury the old life and stop trying to improve it. Stop asking others to improve it. Take up the cross and deny yourself. Stop trusting in yourself. Stop focusing on yourself. Begin to judge your thoughts. You know what self is now. The old man's dead, but his baggage is up here. You've experienced what I'm talking about. Christ has flown through you, and none of this bugged you at all. And you've had that experience throughout your life. We just want to make it consistent. And when these like messages come and the door closes and these feelings come, it's all a flashing red light. And don't go for the consequence, go for the cause. I've shifted focus. And when Satan's sitting there and whispering to you, saying to you, you're worthless, you're unacceptable, you're left out, all you say to him is, yeah, but Jesus was never left out. And Jesus was always acceptable. And Jesus is now my life. Let's talk about him. When other people come around to you and here you are at peace and they want to move you and they try to use your old image to move you, own it so you can disown it. I can't get rid of this pen with it sitting there. I must own it to give it to you. So own it to disown it. And if someone hints at you that you're not needed, look at Jesus, compare yourself to him. In my flesh dwells no good thing. Who would need me? Amen. And then what are they going to say? Well, I'm unwanted and unacceptable. Uh-huh. Compared to Jesus, uh-huh. And? What does that mean to me? You're a failure. Well, I can't say I've done anything right. Because I can go up this ladder and Christ has arrived here and the best I've ever done is here. So, yeah, I'm a failure. So what? You don't let people move you in that. You own it because he crucified your flesh. He didn't like it. He killed it. And now you're able to get on. These things I'm really happy to see because I can count them up and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 strongholds of Christ in you. Not Satan's strongholds, but God's strongholds. If you feel unlovable, plug into His. Come and be my love. You feel unacceptable, plug into His. Everything you've ever wanted as a feeler, He'll meet in you. And so these things are God's stronghold to keep you near. The more red lights you have, the better off you're doing. The person who has one or two things doesn't have a lot of strongholds. I'm happy to see all of that in you. Okay, you see where we went with that? We've got a lot of information. We've got a place to go. As I would begin to work with Kent, I'd look to the Holy Spirit to bring to my mind and to bring to his heart things that we share together as we begin to move on. We've got a beginning place. We've got a starting point, and we begin to move in that. Again, you'll do this through taking the long history, not the short one. And so we'll get together and do that.